Welcome back to the Path to Better A1C podcast. I am your host, Jenny Pena, National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach, Diabetes Prevention Program Lifestyle Coach, founder and CEO of Gempi Coaching, providing health coaching that focus and specializes on diabetes prevention and diabetes management. Now, today I'm going to be diving into a topic that affects millions of people, and that is diabetes. I know that a lot of people know about diabetes in the terms of, yes, there is an illness, it has to do with sugar, and it has to do with carb intake, and that's it. But a lot of people don't really understand the types of diabetes because there's not just one type, and also what is it that happens in our bodies, right, when we have diabetes or when we have that insulin resistance that a lot of people are mentioning lately as well. So we're diving into this. Now, whether it is you or a loved one that has been diagnosed with pre-diabetes or diabetes, or you're even concerned about your risk, this episode is going to break down for you and give you like that clear, actionable steps where you should start so that you can take control and how important it is to raise awareness and not be passive about it. I have had a lot of clients. I actually had one client specifically recently. And while we had a few sessions, the client was really in what some coaches call a pre-contemplation mode. They knew that they needed to make changes, and they really didn't make any changes. And what ended up happening was the client now has diabetes. Now the client has to be on several medications, and now there is some sort of initial signs of kidney disease. This is the result of not doing anything when you start seeing these yellow flags coming up. So if your A1C is showing as being elevated, if you're already pre-diabetic, this is the best time to start making changes. Don't wait until it turns into type 2 diabetes. Okay? But anyway, let's go with the notes that I have here for you. Now, what is diabetes? At its core, it's a condition that affects how your body processes glucose. Because the sugar that fuels your cells, right? It's called glucose. That's how you get the energy. When everything is working properly, your pancreas produces insulin. It acts like a key to let the glucose in your cells, right? But with diabetes, the system does not work as it should. And that's what leads to higher blood sugar levels in your blood, right? The bloodstream is going to have a lot more glucose than what they should. And in overtime, that's why I'm saying when you start seeing those yellow flags, you need to act quickly. Over time, it can cause serious health complications. Now, let's talk a little bit about this, right? Again, when you eat, your body breaks down food into glucose, it sends it into the blood. The insulin helps move that glucose from your blood into your cells. When glucose enters your cells, it is either used for fuel, for energy right away, or it is stored for later use. Now, your blood glucose will be affected in different ways depending on what type of diabetes you have. Now, before I get into the types, I'm going to clarify one thing because some people get confused. Your glucose, when you use a continuous monitor device or you just monitor through a prick of your finger and checking your glucose level, at that point in time, that is the level of glucose in your bloodstream at that point. And it changes. It changes when you eat, it changes when you're waking up. It is not a straight line. A1C is a blood test that actually looks at the average glucose throughout a period of 2 or 3 months. And it helps give a guideline as to how much of a spike and a crash you get throughout the day. So this is the difference between glucose and A1C. Now, A1C helps bring prediabetes as a diagnosis or diabetes based on the average in 2 or 3 months. So that's why a lot of doctors will recommend to actually have this test twice a year if you're trying to monitor, if you're a higher risk. And if you have diabetes, then most likely you will have either continuous monitor or you will use the prick of the finger to test the glucose levels when you wake up, the glucose levels after you eat certain foods, just to monitor and see what is your body doing when you eat certain foods. So now let's go to the three main types of diabetes. Now we have type 1. Type 1 is an autoimmune condition where the body mistakenly attacks insulin producing cells in the pancreas. Now, as a result, people with type 1 just need to take insulin every day. This type usually appears in childhood and early childhood, but it can actually develop at any age. But it's more of an autoimmune condition. Now, remember, it treats, what happens is that the immune system mistakenly treats those beta cells that make insulin as invaders and destroy them. So when these beta cells are destroyed, it's like your pancreas cannot produce any insulin anymore. So you actually need that insulin to live. Um, and again, it is one thing that it requires a lot of diligence. There's a lot more involvement. And again, make sure that you have your team to support you because, again, you now have to monitor the insulin, time it based on your foods, just because the pancreas has no cells to produce that insulin. Now, type 2. The type 2 is the most common type. And to be quite honest, is often linked to lifestyle factors like diet, physical activity, and then there is also a genetic component. There are some ethnic groups that tend to have a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Now, with type 2 diabetes, there are two things that could be happening in your body. Either your body does not use insulin properly, or it doesn't make enough. And because of that, it will lead to high blood sugar levels. It's not using the insulin properly. That's why you will hear about insulin resistance. And it's not just with diabetes, people that have PCOS, and there are other conditions out there that are linked to insulin resistance. That is actually the root cause. If you talk to a functional doctor or a functional health coach, that's kind of like they will treat it. They go at the root, and the root is really insulin resistance. Now, at first, right, with type 2, your beta cells make extra insulin to make up for it. It's like, okay, like the blood sugar levels are high. Let's keep pumping insulin. What happens is that over time, your pancreas can't make enough insulin to keep your blood glucose levels normal. So then type 2 diabetes will start developing. That's why it is often in middle age and older adults that it starts showing the signs. However, I am going to say that it is increasing in young people. And me personally, I was diagnosed with prediabetes when I was in my 20s and I was not overweight. Those are two things that a lot of people think that will exclude them from the risk. It's like, well, I am not overweight, or I'm in my 20s. There is no way I can develop diabetes. Well, you're wrong. And I'm here to tell you that. So, the treatment for people with type 2 diabetes, it's pretty much starting with the lifestyle changes. And that's what I do as a health coach. That's what I specialize. I specialize in helping pre-diabetics and diabetics start incorporating this healthy eating and exercise, managing their stress, managing their sleep. However, your healthcare provider may need also to prescribe some medication. A lot of my clients that have prediabetes, at times, depending on the level, sometimes the doctors will say start with lifestyle changes first, but it depends on the level. They may get on metformin, they may get on a GLP-1. There are different protocols, and it all depends on what your doctor and your provider decide that is best fit for you. And I will have an episode that is going to talk about all the different medications, and I'm looking forward to actually pronouncing all of them. So you may get a laugh out of that episode when it comes out, but I will talk about that. Now, all these injectable medications, like if you have type 1, it's going to be insulin. If you have type 2, it may be metformin. It may be metformin and something else. It really depends on your case and your doctor, your endocrinologist. They're going to be the ones helping you with this. Now, think about type 2 diabetes as a progressive disease. So it needs to be managed, because if not, what happens is it starts creating an impact on a bunch of other areas. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Now, we already covered type 1 diabetes, autoimmune condition, type 2 diabetes, that's mainly connected to genetics and lifestyle. And then now we have gestational diabetes. And that is when it occurs during pregnancy. Your body doesn't produce enough insulin to meet that increased needs. And while it often goes away after childbirth, it does increase the risk of developing type 2 diabetes later in life. So it's already creating that genetics component. It's creating that genetics component. It's creating that um, ethnic and genetics component that may play a part on gestational diabetes. Now, remember, for most women, blood glucose levels will return to normal. But again, the moment that you have that already while pregnant, that is something that you need to start monitoring, just because it already puts you at a higher risk. Now, how does diabetes affect your body? Over time, high blood sugar levels can damage vital organs and systems in your body, leading to serious health issues. So that's why I am so passionate for awareness, for taking action, doing the things that you can now just to prevent it. Because then it is harder to pull back, it's harder to undo the damage that it can be done, and that it takes time for it to be done. No. High blood sugar levels can damage small blood vessels in your body, right? Impacting your eyes, your kidneys, your nerves. High blood glucose may also harm large blood vessels, leading to heart disease or stroke. So, managing your diabetes can actually prevent or delay a lot of these complications. So, let's go a little bit in detail. Blood vessel damage. The high blood sugar weakens the blood vessels. It makes them weak, and it increases a lot of the risk of heart health disease and stroke. And this past month on my Instagram, I shared a lot of tips in terms of lifestyle and habits and dietitian and things of that. I shared a lot of tips and guidelines in terms of diet and exercise, just to prevent and bring awareness with the connection that has diabetes and heart disease. Um, so to bring awareness. Now, kidney disease. Diabetes is one of the leading causes of kidney failure because the kidneys have to work overtime to filter that excess sugar, right? Eye problems. Uncontrolled diabetes can lead to actually what is called diabetic retinopathy. And probably I'm killing the name, but this can cause blindness if you leave it untreated. Nerve damage is called neuropathy. This can cause pain, tingling, and numbness in your hands and feet. So keep an eye on that. And then there are other increased risk of infections, right? Like diabetes weaken your immune system. It makes it harder to heal wounds. It makes it harder to fight infections. So all these things are elements that you need to be considering it. Now, what can you do to take action? What can you do now? The good news is that you're listening to the podcast. That means that the good news is that you're listening to the good news is that you're listening to this podcast, because that means you're aware that something needs to change. And that is the first step. So, first consult with your healthcare provider. If you already have diabetes, working with your doctor, endocrinologist, dietitian, it can help you get a plan tailored to your needs. Involving a health coach like me will actually give you that support and guideline and guidance so that you can implement these plans and make it fit into your life. Get support, right? Again, a diabetes educator, health coach. There's a lot of resources online. Diabetes.org has a lot of resources. There's some classes, there's some cooking classes, and all of these is free. Um, these resources, right? Like they will help you through lifestyle changes and help you support along the way. Now, the next thing that you can do is lifestyle changes. And I know it can be overwhelming, but if you have prediabetes and you're at a higher risk, for the most part, simple changes like eating balanced meals, staying active, managing stress, they can all help prevent type 2 diabetes. So there are a lot of classes and resources out there. I share a lot of things. I have a podcast. Um, Make sure you start educating yourself and creating those changes, and start with one thing. If it becomes overwhelming, start with one thing. Even like think about like, okay, like, are you hydrating well? Even hydration, and I have talked about that in previous episodes. Hydration is such a key component to balance your blood sugar. If you don't drink enough water, the concentration of sugar in your bloodstream is going to be higher. So if there's like one simple step you can do is that. Um, so start slow and build up from there. Pick one habit, work on it for a week or two, and then add a next one to it. And know your risk. If you are unsure about your risk level, in the show notes, there are two links, one for diabetes.org, one for the CDC. It's a quick online questionnaire that you can assess your risk. When in doubt, tell your medical provider that you want to get tested for A1C. Tell them when you go for your annual, say like, I want to know what is my A1C levels, and talk about them. Talk about their concerns, right? If you have close relatives that are diabetic, that automatically put you at a higher risk. If you're overweight, it puts you at a higher risk. If you're starting to feel those sugar crashes and things of that sort throughout the day, and ups and downs in energy, those are signs that you need to explore and just to rule these things out, right? Know your risk. And please, like, diabetes is serious, but it is also manageable and in many cases preventable. So the sooner you take action, the better your chances to protecting your health for the long run. So I hope this brings a little bit of clarity and a little bit of the science behind diabetes. Diabetes is not just, oh, you need to swear off carbs and not eat them anymore. That's not what diabetes is. So hopefully by now you understand, you're clear, and you are ready to make the necessary changes. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Path to Better A1C. If you found this episode helpful, please share with a friend. Don't forget to check out the show notes. There is always information there, how to reach out to me. If you have any questions, please reach out. Remember the risk assessment links, they're going to be right there in the show notes. And I will see you in the next episode. I am definitely going to go over a lot of these foundational concepts that many people don't know much about, or they know in a very superficial way. So we can get to know the science and what is behind it. Have an amazing week. And remember, every Friday, a brand new episode. Subscribe so you can get the alert. Have an amazing week. Bye.